and merely occupy the surface of the ground, it seemed strange to me how they came at that elevation. A geologist would doubtless be able to solve the mystery in a few minutes. The oaks that grow on this high bank are rather larger and more flourishing than those in the valleys and more fertile portions of the soil. Behind the town, in the direction of the Cavan and Emily roads, is a wide space which I call the squatters' ground. It is being entirely covered with shanties, in which the poor emigrants, commuted pensioners, and the like have located themselves and families. Some remain here under the ostensible reason of providing a shelter for their wives and children till they have prepared a home for their reception on their respective grants. But not unfrequently it happens that they are too indolent or really unable to work on their lots, often situated many miles in the backwoods, and in distant and unsettled townships, presenting great obstacles to the poor emigrant, which it requires more energy and courage to encounter than is possessed by a vast number of them. Others, of idle and profligate habits, spend the money they received, and sell the land, for which they gave away their pensions, after which they remain miserable squatters on the shanty ground. The shanty is a sort of primitive hut in Canadian architecture, and is nothing more than a shed built of logs, the chinks between the round edges of the timbers being filled with mud, moss, and bits of wood. The roof is frequently composed of logs split and hollowed with the axe, and placed side by side so that the edges rest on each other, the concave and convex surfaces being alternately uppermost. Every log forms a channel to carry off the rain and melting snow. The eaves of this building resemble the scalloped edges of a clam shell; but rude as this covering is, it effectually answers the purpose of keeping the interior dry, far more so than the roofs formed of bark or boards, through which the rain will find entrance. Sometimes the shanty has a window, sometimes only an open doorway, which admits the light and lets out the smoke. I was greatly amused by the remark made by a little Irish boy, that we hired to be our hewer of wood and drawer of water, who had been an inhabitant of one of these shanties. "Ma'am," said he, "when the weather was stinging cold, we did not know how to keep ourselves warm, for while we roasted our eyes before the fire, our backs were just freezing; so first we turned one side and then the other, just as you would roast a goose on a spit. Mother spent half the money father earned at his straw work" (he was a straw chair maker) "in whisky to keep us warm; but I do think a larger mess of good hot praters (potatoes) would have kept us warmer than the whisky did." A rude chimney, which is often nothing better than an opening cut in one of the top logs above the hearth. A few boards, fastened in square form, serve as the vent for the smoke, the only precaution against the fire catching the log walls behind the hearth being a few large stones placed in a half circular form, or more commonly a bank of dry earth raised against the wall. Nothing can be more comfortless than some of these shanties, reeking with smoke and dirt, the common receptacle for children, pigs, and fowls. But I have given you the dark side of the picture. I am happy to say all the shanties on the squatters' grounds were not like these. On the contrary, by far the larger portion were inhabited by tidy folks, and had one or even two small windows, and a clay chimney regularly built up through the roof. Some were even roughly floored, and possessed similar comforts with the small log houses. You will, perhaps, think it strange when I assure you that many respectable settlers, with their wives and families, persons delicately nurtured and accustomed to every comfort before they came hither, have been contented to inhabit a hut of this kind during the first or second year of their settlement in the woods. I have listened with feelings of great interest to the history of the hardships endured by some of the first settlers in the neighbourhood, when Peterborough contained but two dwelling houses. Then there were neither roads cut nor boats built for communicating with the distant and settled parts of the district. Consequently, the difficulties of procuring supplies and provisions was very great, beyond what any one that has lately come hither can form any notion of. When I heard of a whole family having had no better supply of flour than what could be daily ground by a small hand mill, and for weeks being destitute of every necessary, not even excepting bread, I could not help expressing some surprise, never having met with any account in the works I had read concerning emigration that at all prepared one for such evils. "These particular trials," observed my intelligent friend, "are confined principally to the first breakers of the soil in the unsettled parts of the country, as was our case. If you diligently question some of the families of the lower class that are located far from the towns, and who had little or no means to support them during the first 12 months till they could take a crop off the land, you will hear many sad tales of distress." Writers on emigration do not take the trouble of searching out these things, nor does it answer their purpose to state disagreeable facts. Few have written exclusively on the bush. Travellers generally make a hasty journey through the long settled and prosperous portions of the country. They see a tract of fertile, well cultivated land, the result of many years of labour. They see comfortable dwellings abounding with all the substantial necessaries of life. The farmer's wife makes her own soap, candles, and sugar. The family are clothed in cloth of their own spinning, and hose of their own knitting. The bread, the beer, the butter, cheese, meat, poultry, etc., are all the produce of the farm. He concludes, therefore, that Canada is a land of Canaan, and writes a book setting forth these advantages, with the addition of obtaining land for a mere song, and advises all persons who would be independent and secure from want to emigrate. He forgets that these advantages are the result of long years of unremitting and patient labour; that these things are the crown, not the first fruits of the settler's toil; and that during the interval many and great privations must be submitted to by almost every class of emigrants. Many people, on first coming out, especially if they go back into any of the unsettled townships, are dispirited by the unpromising appearance of things about them. They find none of the advantages and comforts of which they had heard and read, and they are unprepared for the present difficulties. Some give way to despondency, and others quit the place in disgust. A little reflection would have shown them that every rood of land must be cleared of the thick forest of timber that encumbers it before an ear of wheat can be grown; that, after the trees have been chopped, cut into length, drawn together, or logged as we call it, and burned, the field must be fenced, the seed sown, harvested, and thrashed before any returns can be obtained; that this requires time and much labour, and if hired labour, considerable outlay of ready money; and in the meantime a family must eat. If, at a distance from a store, every article must be brought through bad roads, either by hand or with a team, the hire of which is generally costly in proportion to the distance and difficulty to be encountered in the conveyance. Now these things are better known beforehand, and then people are aware what they have to encounter. Even a labouring man, though he have land of his own, is often, I may say generally, obliged to hire out to work for the first year or two, to earn sufficient for the maintenance of his family; and even so many of them suffer much privation before they reap the benefit of their independence. Were it not for the hope and certain prospect of bettering their condition ultimately, they would sink under what they have to endure; but this thought buoys them up. They do not fear an old age of want and pauperism. The present evils must yield to industry and perseverance. They think also for their children, and the trials of the present time are lost in pleasing anticipations for the future.